Hello everybody, I am back with another video. It has only been about 2 years, but I figured what better way to celebrate a lovely week of sunshine here in sunny Manchester than to talk to you guys about your diets, about your weight loss diets. It's that time of year, people are looking to be going away, they're in the midst of their diets, they're about to start their own diets, and I thought I'd talk about some of the things you need to be aware of and things you need to be receptive to when you're in the midst of your diets, because there's certain things that should trigger alarm bells as to whether or not your diet is going in the right direction. Now, the things I'm going to talk about are things that I've experienced myself, things I wish I would have been, again, a little bit more receptive to at the time, but ultimately these are things that should flag some serious alarm bells, and it usually means that your diet isn't perhaps going in the right direction. So the first thing you need to look out for when you're dieting is whether or not you are binging. Now, I refer to this specifically as abnormal binging because binging, to be fair, can be perhaps for some people something you do every weekend where you have a little bit of a let your hair down day. But abnormal binging for me is an episode or a day or several days where you eat a certain amount of food, usually a lot of food, typically very poor choices, things that are high in sugar, high in fat, and they're episodes which you wouldn't typically be experiencing prior to your diet. Again, perhaps at the weekend you'll go out for a few drinks, a burger and chips, or go to the cinemas, have lots of popcorn, etc. But abnormal binging for me is where you're eating, say, those kinds of foods, but it's just straight away. You wake up in the morning, you have these sudden bursts of, oh my gosh, I need to have 7 donuts, I need to eat 5 bowls of cereal. It's a really sudden urge to just get whatever you can see in the cupboard. You almost feel as if you don't have control over it. And again, for me, if you're starting to do it every few days, that is a definite sign that your diet needs to change. But for me, I remember back when I started to do it for the first time, in my head, it seemed to be every 2 weeks, I had this massive blowout. It was for the whole day. And what happened was, as soon as I got up in the morning, I'd go to the shops, go to the confectionery aisle, as they call it, and just raid the aisle for everything it's worth. It was a really, really bad experience. As a result, I had instant regret. I hated myself for it. And so the next day, I would punish myself for it. I would punish myself for it because I felt as if I'd gone way off track, and I now need to compensate by having very little food the next day. So what I would say in a whole about abnormal binging is that if you feel as if there is any sign of binging in your diet, just take a step back and think, A, would I have done this before my diet? And B, how often am I now starting to do it? Because again, if you feel as if it is becoming more and more of a behavior, then you definitely need to look at your diet. And ultimately, a lot of the time, it's just increase your calories. People have these binges, and I've had my binges simply because I'm not eating enough. I'm going to the gym, or I'm exercising, eating a certain amount of food, but my body still needs more. And so what happens is you have these really, really bad urges just to eat everything you can see. So yeah, binging. That's the number one thing. Second thing is, well, let's find out. Okay, the second biggest thing in my eyes that you need to look out for when you're dieting is the consumption of diet drinks and foods, or 0-calorie food and drinks. Typically, from my experience, it's drinks. You can get things like 0-calorie sauces or 0-calorie sweets. I've had some really bad experiences with 0-calorie sweets, so I would just write this off right now. Don't go anywhere near these things, but I appreciate for other issues you might have them. But in terms of dieting, that's definitely a no-go. However, when it comes to drinks, I think that they do have a part to play in our diets. You know, if you really want that if you have that sugar craving, sometimes you can erode it, get rid of it with just a can of Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi, or something of that nature. However, if you are starting to consume it instead of food, then that is something which is going to not do you any good in the future. For example, say I need to eat 2,500 calories a day. It then goes to 6 o'clock and I've got 300 calories left to eat. I know that I'm going to be up for maybe a further 5 hours. So what I would do is I would know, okay, I've got that bottle of Pepsi in the fridge. I'll drink, a few cups of that. That will tie me over. And then maybe at 8, 9 o'clock, I'll have the remainder of my calories. That is not the right way to go about it. If you are really hungry at 6 o'clock and you have very few calories left, one of two things: you have simply eaten excessively and unnecessarily earlier in the day, or you're simply not giving yourself a big enough allowance in terms of calories. So if you find yourself that you're becoming very reliant on these drinks to tie you over in the day, definitely something that you need to look at. In addition, if you're consuming it more than what you were doing before your diet. Now for me, this is probably the biggest one. I think this relates to a lot of things when you're on a diet. If you start to do things which you would never dream of doing before you enter a diet, whether again it's binging, whether or not it's eating a lot of a certain food, bad foods I should say, then it's something that needs to be looked at, because I think you're going to go down this steep path of decline whereby your behaviours are going to get worse and worse to the point where it's going to be very hard to reverse. Lastly, on this point, it's when you're reliant on them. So I got to the point in my diet, and this was probably 8 to 10 weeks in, where I was buying 2 litres of diet drinks a day and consuming the whole bottle without fail. And that may seem quite excessive for some people, but trust me, when you deprive yourself or your body of that many calories for that amount of time, your body just wants anything that you can throw at it. So you're essentially trying to trick your body into still losing weight. Drinking 2 litres of Pepsi Max a day is, I cannot describe how bad that is for your diet. It's definitely not something that you should be doing. But again, if you do get into that stage, it's very hard in the moment to actually realise how bad it is. But yeah, if any of these are flagging in your diet, definitely something that you need to look in a bit more. And again, to my previous point, just increase your calories. A lot of these cravings come from the fact that you're not eating enough. So that's diet drinks. So the last point I want to talk about is losing weight too quickly. Now, when you're in the midst of your diet, you typically think that if you're losing weight, it's a good thing, which is reasonable to assume. A lot of the time it can be, but if you're losing it too quickly, i.e. more than 2 pounds per week, and I've put in brackets here after 4 weeks into a diet, because usually up to 4 weeks from the start of a diet, there can be a lot of other variables like holding a lot of water, like starting to exercise a lot more, so your weight can fluctuate a little bit. So after 4 weeks, it's fairly stable, and if you are losing more than 2 pounds per week at that point thereafter, it usually suggests that you're losing the wrong kind of weight. What would typically happen is, if you are in this scenario here, you'll find yourself that you're actually losing muscle mass as opposed to body fat. Losing weight as a generic term is quite non-specific. Everybody typically wants to lose body fat, unless you're an athlete and you have to cut a certain amount of weight, I don't know, like a cyclist for example. But typically body fat is what we want to lose. If we diet too much though, a lot of the weight we're going to lose is really good substantial muscle tissue, which is not a good thing. Second point I've put here is that if you're starting to feel a lot weaker, lethargic during the day, in terms of your gym sessions, or generally when you're exercising, you're either not doing it or you're not enjoying it when you're there. You find that you've not really got much motivation. You can't, for example, get a pump, or you can't sustain a certain level of energy throughout the workout, whereas beforehand you used to. These are all telltale signs that you're losing weight a little bit too quickly. And therefore, one of two things: you need to either cut down your exercise a bit if you are exercising a lot, or again, you need to increase your calories. This graph here kind of indicates what I'm referring to. So when you first start, you'll find that you will probably lose a good amount of weight. Again, water plays a big role in that. But then as we go into the diet, it just seems to go downhill. Now, I've been in a position where I've been losing up to 4 pounds a week, which on the scales looks brilliant, but actually it's the wrong kind of weight that I need to be losing. And so what you'll find is that you'll get to the point again where you'll go back to my other previous points in terms of you'll start to then have abnormal binges, and you'll start to just go off the rails. So I don't want to go into too depth with all this, but I hope this has helped. Again, to recap, if you are overeating, if you're having abnormal binges, you wouldn't never typically do it. If you're becoming very reliant on 0-calorie food and drinks, and again, lastly, if you're losing weight too quickly, they're typically telltale signs that your diet is not optimal, it's not going to be effective, and it's not going to be sustainable. If any of these things ring a bell, comment down below or private message me, and I'll be happy to point you in the right direction, see if I can help in any way. Again, it's the worst feeling being in a diet when it's such nice weather and you don't feel as if the sacrifices that you're making are ultimately going to pay off. So if you are one of those people, if you are worried, let me know and we can go from there. So yeah, thank you for watching. This has been another episode of Cooney and his whiteboard. So until the next one, enjoy the weather.